Here at the Social Animals Big Band, we're all about guerrilla marketing. And since I wanted to make this video about different ways of visualizing harmony, I figured there's no better way to kill two birds with one stone than to tag the streets of Boston with the OG pitch diagram. The circle of fifths makes a great 2D diagram, but what if we wanted to take things a step further and create a three-dimensional diagram of pitches? To explain that, it's going to take something a lot more sophisticated than this electrical box. Come with me. Could I just have a chocolate, please, sir? It's 1739, and a physicist, an astronomer, a logician, a geographer, an engineer, and a music theorist walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Hello, Leonard Boiler, physicist, astronomer, logician, geographer, engineer, music theorist, and inventor of the tonnets."
What's a tonnets?
This is a tonnets. The word tonnets comes from the German tonnets, which means tonnets. Like the circle of fifths, the tonnets is a visual representation of pitch space.
What is pitch space?
A pitch space is a visual metaphor for the shifting harmonic structure of a musical work. We can imagine every note in a chord as a point in space. With every change in chord, the points will shift to create a new shape. Sometimes the shift will be subtle, like the shift from major to minor. Other times it will be more drastic, like the relationship known as the hexatonic pole. This is where the circle of fifths falls flat. With the circle of fifths, you can only move in two directions, clockwise or counterclockwise. In that way, it's like living in a two-dimensional world where you can only see and move in one dimension. But we live in a 3D world. And even though we live in a 3D world, we view our world in two dimensions. That's why we can capture our perspective through two-dimensional images. The power of the tonnets is that it allows us to view harmony as two-dimensional shapes moving through three-dimensional space, the same way that we view the world. Unlike the circle of fifths, which is comprised of one intervallic cycle, the tonnets is composed of three cycles of intervals: perfect fifths, minor thirds, and major thirds, each shown on a different plane. As you can see, the circle of fifths is part of the tonnets. As you move left to right, the pitches ascend by perfect fifth. We could even wrap the bag into a tube to complete the circle. But unlike the circle of fifths, the tonnets also includes third relationships, and you can see the major and minor thirds running diagonally in opposite directions. These also form a loop in both dimensions. So if we were to take our two-dimensional tonnets and we wrap it in both directions at once, the resulting shape is what I like to call the donut of fifths, or what music theorists call the toroidal tonnets. In the 1800s, German musicologist Hugo Riemann used the tonnets to develop a theory of harmonic motion called Riemannian theory. And in the 20th century, a group of music theorists used that theory to develop a new theory called Neo-Riemannian transformation theory. John Coltrane came up with a very similar theory, which he called giant steps. More on that later, but this is more than just a theory. It's actually based on psychological reality. Instead of tethering harmony to a single key or a set of keys, Neo-Riemannian transformation theory relates chords based on their perceived triad distance. In other words, it's an intuitive way of analyzing harmony based on common tones and parsimonious voice leading. In a musical context, the term parsimonious just refers to close, efficient, and economical voice leading. Neo-Riemannian transformation theory outlines three transformations, which can be combined to form cycles that wind around the tonnets.
The letter of the day is P.
P stands for parallel. And just like in traditional diatonic harmony, this indicates a shift from major to minor or vice versa. You'll notice that with each of these transformations, only one note moves by one step. This means that Josh only has to move one finger by one fret.
The letter of the day is R.
The R transformation is also a relationship that you might be familiar with. It involves a transformation from a major triad to its relative minor or vice versa. You'll notice that the R transformation involves motion by a whole step instead of the half-step motion that we saw with the P transformation. However, both transformations alternate between a major and a minor triad by changing one note by one step.
The letter of the day is L.
L stands for leading tone exchange, which means that the root of a major chord is exchanged for its leading tone, or vice versa. These are called binary transformations because they only transform back and forth in two directions. We can combine these transformations to create rich and colorful cycles, all bound by the tenets of parsimonious voice leading and common tones. Binary transformations transform a major triad into a minor triad and vice versa. But what if we wanted to move directly from one major or minor triad to another triad of the same quality, still using the most economical voice leading? We can combine our binary transformations to create looping cycles of the same quality. Take the PL cycle. These triads appear to be very distantly related on the circle of fifths, but on the tonics we can see that they're actually very closely related. Can we put it in D for a sec? Now imagine we added a dominant chord preceding each chord of the cycle. Starting to seem familiar?
If you or a loved one has been hurt by giant steps, you may have attended jazz school and you may be entitled to compensation. For more information, contact the law offices of the Social Animals Big Band and tell them you mean business.
But wait, giant steps uses seventh chords, not triads. So if the tonics allows us to imagine triads as two-dimensional, three-sided shapes moving through 3D space, then to understand seventh chords we'd need 4D harmony.
That's correct, Josh. To visualize seventh chords, we need a fourth dimension. If the circle of fifths allows us to visualize one-dimensional shapes in a two-dimensional space, and the tonics allows us to visualize two-dimensional shapes in a three-dimensional space, then to visualize three-dimensional shapes like this cube, we need a four-dimensional diagram. Like the triadic transformations on the tonics, this cube displays all half-diminished and dominant chords according to their parsimonious voice leading and common tones. Since we've added a fourth note, we've added a fourth dimension, which means we need a 4D cube in order to create looping cycles out of this diagram in the same way that we did with the tonics. This 4D cube is actually a real mathematical shape called a tesseract, and if we lived in a four-dimensional universe, we could visualize that cube from all four dimensions, up and down, left to right, front to back, and... Pretty confusing, right? But that's why harmony is such a powerful metaphor. We can conceive of four-sided motion in terms of musical harmony much more intuitively than physical space. But that still isn't enough, because even if the chords to giant steps are notated as seventh chords, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th are all permissible as well. This allows for up to 7 musical dimensions. Obviously, we can't imagine what that would really look like, since we visualize the world as a series of 2D images moving through a 3D universe. But we can Google 7D cube. As you can see, this stuff gets pretty complex, and that's why music is such a powerful metaphor for conceptual thinking. Diagrams like the circle of fifths and the tonics were created as visual metaphors for the harmonic structure of music. But perhaps we can flip the script and look at harmony as an approachable metaphor for a type of physical space that we can't conceive of in any other way.
The Social Animals Big Band will be hosting a Halloween party at the Lilypad in Cambridge on October 29th at 10:30 p.m.
Live and in 3D.